Welcome to Money on Tap, your personal finance headquarters. We bring out the professionals' experience and some fun in what we call three-dimensional investing, utilizing insurance, brokerage, fee-based planning. We believe all investments have merit, and all investments have relevance, and all investments have their time and place, depending on you, your objectives, and your goals. My name is Seth Krussman, and I'm joined here once again with John Ryder and Ben Brayshaw. How are you guys today?
Good morning.
Good morning, Seth.
We're all planners. Well, gosh, that cracks me up. I love that. Good. You guys do the good morning parts so well.
It is a good morning, Seth. Hope it is where you are.
We're all planners and partners with Brayshaw Financial Group, and we're glad you're listening to Money on Tap. And if you're looking to sit down with an advisor and start making some of the right steps towards your financial goals, we welcome the opportunity to do that with you. And you can reach us at 855-226-8551 or email us at info@yourmoneyontap.com. You can also find us at Facebook at Money on Tap, and website yourmoneyontap.com, Stitcher.
Where
iTunes.
are we not, Seth? Where are we not?
Oh my gosh, there's just too many ways to connect with us.
I know. And if you're joining us through any of those venues, we're glad you're here. So today's, gosh darn it, you guys. On today's show, we're going to spend some time talking about how we communicate with our kids about money and how we talk to our parents.
And maybe more importantly, Seth, how we don't communicate with our kids about money and how we don't communicate with our parents about money. That seems to be like a major theme that I find when working with clients, for sure. But, Seth, I think that we can all think of people that have been great role models in our life, and we can think about many that have not been so great.
John, you don't need to use my name right now.
I am not going to, Ben. I'm not going to. But there are those that have mentored us over the years, and then there are those that maybe we have the opportunity to mentor. And I recently heard a pastor say that it was important for him to always be learning from someone, but also to be always pouring into others. He said, I always want to have a Barnabas in my life, and I always want to have a Timothy in my life. And as you may know, he was talking about Paul from the New Testament era, who he...
My search is over.
His search is over
between the two of you.
Yeah.
My search is over.
But, in talking about Paul... Paul had recently converted to Christianity, and Barnabas was his mentor. And then years later, he mentored Timothy. So when it comes to our retirement planning, financial planning, I think it's important for us not only to listen to others who have come before us, but also to help others that are coming after. But before we get into the main topic of our show, we'd like to spend a little time talking about the current drama that's going on in the White House right now. There's always drama going on in the White House. We are hearing a lot of talk about secret Russian meetings, about the Russians probing into our elections, about FBI investigations into the Trump White House, etc. And I think a lot of this has investors on edge.
Yeah, there's a lot of stuff going on. And I was listening, I was just telling you guys this before we started the show, but I heard Trump yesterday on something talking about some job scenario or whatever, and he was swearing up and down that, not swearing physically, but that the guy wanted to kiss him and hug him, and it was getting awkward and all sorts of crazy stuff. Yeah, there's drama. There's drama all over.
That's
the place.
Very presidential of you, Trump. Thank you.
Very, very presidential. But I got a good laugh out of it. But
we all get a good laugh out of it sometimes. Laugh or cry, right?
But there's been Trump is not the only drama we've seen in the White House.
Oh, we'll talk about that.
Yeah, and so that we got a lot of presidents to go through if you want to start going back and forth. But I think the big question that everyone really has is, how does the presidential role, play or impact their portfolio? Especially with trying to have that successful retirement and trying to find the solutions you need.
In looking back at things, major controversies in the White House have shown really few connections in what's happening. So let's just take a look in the way back, presidential world, and what has impacted your investments or not impacted your investments like you might think. Sometimes it seems like these crazy headlines are going to really drive the market up or drive the market down. But if we take a look back at, let's say, Watergate or the Whitewater Lewinsky scandal, if you remember that, with the presidents that were sitting at the time, each event really had less impact on the stock market than several other factors.
And it's funny because when you're in the midst of that and you're going through this, like right now, I mean, I'll be honest with you, you have this White House drama. We have clients asking about this constantly. What's going on with the market? How is that going to impact the market? When you're going right through it, and I remember even back in 98, 99 with the Lewinsky scandals and all that going on, I remember thinking, oh boy, this is going to have this crazy, devastating effect. But, it's interesting. So the day that Nixon's possible connection with the Watergate break-in hit the front page of the Washington Post on October 10th, 1972, the S&P index actually rose by 0.8%. So I don't know if any of us were, I don't think any of us were advising back at that time, but when reports first broke about the relationship between Clinton and Lewinsky on January 21st, 1998, it actually dropped 0.8% at the market close, the S&P 500. So when articles of impeachment were issued for Nixon on July 27, 1974, the S&P dropped by 1.77%. I mean, just as a result of that. But it actually rose 1.25% on the day Clinton was hit with 2 impeachment counts of his own on December 19, 1998.
So to break that down for listeners, basically, Nixon was positive on the initial side, negative on the backside. Clinton was negative on the front side, positive on the backside.
Right.
Yeah.
Right.
So, I mean, it's kind of like an exact opposite. Oh, that's interesting. I think, during all these different conflicts, we've got all sorts of stuff going on. I mean, even with back then, I mean, the statistics say it was 12.2% inflation. Gas prices were out of control.
Yeah, during Watergate, right?
Yeah, it was just nuts.
Yeah, people were waiting in lines forever for gas. And it took a little while for the stock market to eventually find its footing, but within a year or so.
The baby boomers that went through that period of time remember it vividly, and they remember waiting in line for gas everywhere.
Yeah. So that was Watergate. Seth, you were going to talk about Clinton.
Yeah, no, that's just one of the things I remember, kind of the stories that we grow up talking about. Now, last night, actually over the weekend, I'm going to sidetrack here a little bit.
Little rabbit trail for Seth.
Yeah, totally off topic, but I love it. My 4-year-old Augusta is things are very different from year to year. She's just growing so fast. And this last weekend, we were up at Swift Lake and we were looking at Mount Adams and Mount St. Helens. All right, and she was so fascinated by these volcanoes. And all she wanted to talk about, and all she was like asking me was, "Can we watch the volcano? Can we watch the volcano movie?" So, anyways, that's a story. Like when I was 4 years old, right? Mount St. Helens erupted, and I remember it. And so I'm looking at her, and I'm like, "Yeah, your daddy remembers this from 4 years old. Like I was your age when Mount St. Helens erupted, and that's what I remember growing up with. Is like one of those events that I had no concept or memory of. People were telling me about the lines that they used to have to wait in for the gas and all these events that were transpiring with really me none the wiser about any of that stuff going on. But
I thought, Seth, you were going to go into and tell us about how some of the eruption caused problems in the stock market. I thought that's what you were going to talk about.
I didn't do my research. I was
you don't know how that impacted the market?
I was just walking through memory lane there. Anyways, that's what's important in my life right now is my 4-year-old.
That's cool. That's great.
Taking on some cool stuff. But anyways, the Clinton crisis and kind of how did the market relate with that? So through the 90s, give a little bit of history there. The market was on the rise, and it took a few dips along the way, such as the Russian financial crisis, where contributed to some of those factors. But ultimately, the market moved up steadily, and until around the 2000s, which I do remember, and most of us will. The tech bubble burst, and .coms that had really pushed that excessive amount of the market up. Basically had this fallout. And more so than the president's actions did during that impeachment.
Yeah, so sometimes these crazy things are going on during presidencies and all that, but it seems like that really doesn't have as much impact. Really what's important is what's going on today. So if we're going to fast forward to today, from the day after the election, the S&P index was up more than 14%. So this is after Trump won the election. The S&P index was up more than 14%.
I gotta tell you, the numbers that you're working through right now, just those are mind blowing.
Aren't they crazy? But
like 14% moves, or people don't even realize like what that takes in a market to move that kind of move the needle that much.
It's a huge amount. In fact, the Dow Jones Industrial.
Not even a year. I mean, people are hoping for. I mean, we talk to people when we sit down with them. We say, "Hey, what do you want to get out of your retirement portfolio?" And they're like, if I could get 5, 6, 7% and feel secure about my. I mean, in a year that I would feel good about that. It's like, We moved 14% in what?
So that's 14.
9 months?
Yeah, in 9 months, that's 14% for the
Wow.
S&P. The Dow Jones up 18%. NASDAQ is up 19. So those are 3 positive gains in the market value. We may think that may be a good sign of things to come, but we don't necessarily know that. And I guess you could make an argument that the business-friendly White House, with Trump in there and with a lot of the regulations he's putting in place or actually taking out of place, can be a positive thing. And it also could be saying, we could say the ongoing controversies that we've seen here haven't necessarily made a dent on that 8-year global bull market that we've had. So we've had a market that keeps on chugging up, and there's other factors that are equally important.
Well, I mean, when you start going through, the market and the comparison of the president, which is really the question everyone has in their mind, right? I mean, we can look at all the past presidents. I mean, even, just going back to, Watergate and so forth. I mean, once he resigned, I mean, the market recovered. Okay, the pre-crisis market recovered with Nixon. And then as you start, moving through all these different, Trump too presidency will end. Whether it's in a few years or whether it's in 6 years.
Sure.
And those are types of things that the market's so much bigger than our president. And I think one of the things that points are made, and it's just like, look at the iPhone. We have an iPhone new release potential with some sort of great awesome thing, news leaked, boom boom boom. The market's shifting, the Dow's going up. President Trump says something, people are like, well, maybe. The biggest thing about Trump becoming president, okay, was simply just the fact that he was pro-business.
Mm-hmm.
The fact that he's pro-business gets everyone excited about taking advantage of the pro-business, which is where a lot of these returns are coming from, the excitement of that. I was talking to a client the other day, and we were just simply talking through some of the investment pieces and so forth. And they were asking, the market's at a high and this, that, and the other thing. And we were talking about different long-term strategies and going through it. And I said, ultimately, no matter how you boil it down, unless we're dealing with terrorist attack or war, we essentially are in a pro-business economy. And that's exciting. And we're in a situation where everyone's expecting taxes to somehow decline for business owners so that they can build their businesses and provide more jobs, and then ultimately allow that flow down to occur. And that's an exciting time to be in, and hopefully we benefit from those things. And we're seeing those benefits to date, but we are at that tumultuous moment of, what if something else happens? And I heard too the other day, someone was talking to me about their child was in boot camp and they've already been assigned to Afghanistan. Like they're literally taken off right away, and what might be potentially going on, around the world, and what's North Korea going to happen with, and all sorts of crazy stuff, right?
Well, I think it really comes down to really a few key factors. Okay, so we can get all caught up on the drama of what's going on in the White House. It's kind of like a reality show sometimes almost. But really when it comes down to it comes down to company, business profitability. Is there an increased demand for goods and services? Is there going to be profit? Is that's ultimately going to help with the stock market? Also look at interest rates too.
I don't know if I 100% agree with that, though.
Okay,
so, one of the things that I've seen, and in 2008 was a great example of it, was that, those scenarios, those concerns, those fears drove the market down initially. But it was rampant fear of the average consumer that drove it down further, and
right.
then
It was
further.
It was the investor confidence and the expectations, right? So there was everybody piles in on the good market, and then once it starts to turn and that fear takes over, and everybody starts
that technical
piling
analysis that John's talking about, I think I agree with it on the upside. I think
Right.
those are the things that start moving the needle forward, and I think the emotional side of excitement about the market is a big trailer in that area. But I think when the market's pulling back, I think some of the initial concerns are that, but I think the emotional side becomes a front runner much more quickly than in the market needle moving up.
So they're both drivers, right? And they both have the capacity to move the needle. And sometimes what we find is that there's a leading indicator, right? People are looking for some of those signs within, companies, bottom line profitability on that spectrum, and then there's the weighting of a market that can make a difference there too. And right now we're in a very interesting piece and period of our market where people would say the market is expensive, and we're looking for a mean reversion or basically some kind of a pullback to start to happen. But a lot of other people are saying that the other side of that is the underpinning of these companies and some of the policies that the that are being handed down would counteract anything like that happening. And so there would be a continued growth in the market.
Yeah. I mean, one of the things I really like about the third-party managers, the tactical ones we use a lot of, separate from our own management on top of some of that,
Sure.
Is simply that they manage the technical analysis you're referencing, but they wait out the emotional downswing. And I think that's what's made them successful. I mean, they're looking at technical triggers. They're pulling out when the market, looks questionable or concerning. I've seen them pull out when the market actually continued moving up because the triggers were there. But again, the market's probably was moving up more on an emotional swing for all we know. And some of this stuff just doesn't make rhyme or reason. I mean, most of the time, and I don't have any numbers behind this, but most of the time after Apple, does their grand annual presentation of stuff, it's like then their stock pulls back. It's almost like clockwork.
The cat's out of the bag, and
it's like clockwork. People, buy or sell on the news, right? Depending on which side of that.
The excitement fizzles, and it kind of goes back to business as usual.
Right, and I think ultimately, you're looking at. That's why I think tactical plays inside the market are so key in the investment world we live in today. The investment world of the past, that's gone. That's what people don't understand. People are saying, well, boy, the market's up. I'm not making all the money I want to make, and et cetera, et cetera. And what they don't realize is that, set it and forget it. Like we talked about the statistic a few weeks ago about 80% of people never
rebalance that 401k.
Rebalance or reallocate their 401k. Like, that's crazy because they've been told, and everyone knows that word, set it and forget it. Well, the truth is that mentality is gone. No one's operating that way, and if you are going to operate that way, you're probably going to get burned. And the technical analysis, okay, people looking at all those like the I's and the T's and crossing them and dotting them, and they're looking at all that technical jargon, all that stuff inside, and then you have an investment person doing tactical, moving in and out of the market. That's the stuff that you need some control with, because these swings, these emotional swings, are only compounded by the historical emotional events that occurred in 2008, 2001, 9/11, Katrina, all those different things have caused emotional fears inside people's reactions. They're reacting a lot quicker, and they have access to do that too.
Speaking of set it and forget it, I just looked at the clock and realized we got to take a break, you guys. And we're going to be right back. You're listening to Money on Tap. And if you're looking to get in touch with us, you can find us at yourmoneyontap.com. Go back, take a look at any of our last, all basically of the vault of what we've released, and get caught up on anything that you're looking for. We look forward to you listening, and we always look forward to the support and appreciate our listenership out there and those that are communicating and asking us questions. You can reach us at info@yourmoneyontap.com. We'll be right back.
On this Cliff Notes edition of Money on Tap, Seth, Ben, and John look at risk and how it affects not only our investments, but virtually every aspect of our lives, both personal and professional.
I think it's important to kind of understand and identify for people, what is that? It looks different for everybody, but generally speaking, and this is from our friends at FINRA, they say that risk is uncertainty with respect to your investments that has the potential to negatively affect your financial welfare. The idea that buying, just say a stock out there and holding it indefinitely ultimately will be good. It'll have some gain at some point in time, but that's not necessarily true with all investments. Then they use a great example of historic averages on the NASDAQ, where if you were to buy that near the top in 2000, that it still has to recover from that. You could buy something near the top and still never see a return on an investment.
In a lot of the risks that you're taking with a lot of different investments, you can't even quantify. There's so many subcategories of risk. And with each company, there's some stuff that you don't even know. I mean, you don't even know if there's a problem inside of it, like in an Enron scenario, which is horrific. But what about strategic risks, financial risks, operational risks, legal risks? other risks associated that are maybe marketing or, I mean, if you have an oil company, what happens if there's an oil spill? You don't know that that's going to happen.
Right, or if you're running a business, there's just different risks that come involved there. If you say the wrong thing, you have legal risks, you have investment risk, you have operational risk. Think about operational risk. You make the wrong decision with an IT, with a computer program, it could really affect.
Yeah, we take risks and by which softwares we actually implement in our company to make sure that things will run smoothly and work well. And then we got health risks when someone gets hurt or injured or falls off a ladder.
Absolutely, yes. We have
or pushed off
like
a ladder. We're not
yes.
sure which happened to John.
Thanks for joining us for this Cliff Notes edition of Money on Tap, with great tips from the pros in three-dimensional investing, utilizing insurance, brokerage, and fee-based planning. Now here's more Money on Tap with Seth, Ben, and John.
Welcome back. You're listening to Money on Tap, your personal finance headquarters, and you can reach us at yourmoneyontap.com. And info at yourmoneyontap.com is where you can email us at. And one of the things that we love to do with our listeners is we appreciate you emailing us your questions, your concerns, your topics, any of your topics that you'd like us to address. If we wind up using them on this show, we will send you either a hat or a T-shirt, which if you haven't taken a look at, most excellent apparel for you. And we just really appreciate you guys out there and all that you do to kind of help bring some of the information to light that is important to you. And that's what we're here for. It's we love talking about this. We talk about this information with our clients a lot, and helping you out in your journey is what we're about at Money on Tap. So we're talking about a need to talk. And what does that mean when we say we need to talk? Well, there's some interesting data that has come to light around generations. And one of the things that we always hope for with generations and passing on the torch is their experiences, the older generation experiences being passed on to the next generation. And what the data is telling us here is that that's not happening. We have the baby boomers that are moving through and the Gen Xers that are moving through. And those two generations, for some reason, aren't talking. And there's a tremendous amount of experience that can help mentor the next generation coming through, and vice versa sometimes as well. But that information needs to be in a place where I think people are communicating more easily. And my hypothesis on this is, there's several reasons, and we don't necessarily address all of those today. But one of the things I think that is hard sometimes is for us to just have money conversations. Mm-hmm. And it's like for some of us, it's cultural. It's like, hey, let's talk about our feelings. And how many guys just jump right out into the group, into a group of people and say, hey, I really want to share how I feel.
That's not how guys are. No,
not a lot.
For sure.
No. And
maybe the gals out there. Maybe the gals out there are that way, but not necessarily the guys.
Right. So how much of it could be kind of our wiring, and some of it might just be very cultural, because there's a lot of, I just use the Jewish culture as an example, that money is a part of that, and not necessarily in a bad way. It's being it's been personified that way in a lot of different plays, writings, or television, whatever you want to say. But there's a part of that culture that really helps to foster a prosperous next generation.
Seth, one of the things that I often hear Ben talking about with clients is that he wants clients to have a successful experience when it comes to their investing. I think there's a lot of truth to that. Many times we have people come to us that have actually had the very opposite experience when it comes to investing. They may have invested and maybe lost a lot of money. Maybe they're in some kind of a program that they lost a lot of money. Maybe they heard about their father or grandfather losing money.
They walk through the door and they've got this historical nightmare they're living in. It's
it could be a generation or two removed. That's the amazing thing.
Yeah, it may not even be them. I know it's pretty scary what you're talking about there.
When you're talking about the successful client experience, and all. I think there's a number of factors that go into that successful experience, including advice that you might have gotten from friends or family members along the way. So on today's show, what we really want to do is we really want to highlight a study that was done by one of the many vendors that we use in our practice, North American. North American Life Insurance recently did a study here in 2007 called the North American Baby Boomer and Generation X Retirement Study. Say that fast 5 times. The North American Baby Boomer and Generation X Retirement Study. And this study looked at the saving, spending, and communication habits of what are known as the sandwich generations. Sandwich generation. That covers everyone from age 36 to age 69. So we're likely to be talking to a lot of people in our listening audience here. This online survey was taken from March 29th to April 3rd of 2017 and included 600 adults between the ages of 36 and 69.
You know, I think what's really scary about this, and we're going to get into, is just how much the middle generation is just sandwiched. I mean, literally between all different fears and concerns, and we're going to get into that. But the sandwich generation, as they talk about, the Pew Research Center had that just over 1 out of every 8 Americans between 40 and 60 years old is both raising a child and caring for a parent. I mean,
that is huge.
They're doing both.
Yeah, yeah.
And
Wow.
and I think one of the things that's really right, we have to take into the demographic side that people are just living longer. I mean, there's a 1 in 4 chance that a married couple over age 65, 1 in 4 chance that one of them will live to 100.
Crazy.
Isn't that nuts?
Yeah, we're going to get more into that in a little bit, just talking about the life expectancy times for kids. It's just amazing.
Okay, in addition to this 1 out of 8 Americans caring for a child or parent, in addition to between 7 and 10 million adults caring for their parents are caring for them in a long distance.
And we know, we have many clients, this is the case right now, where they're trying to take care of them, they're sending money, they're doing all kinds of things.
And we talk about this all the time, the demographic studies of the, basically the baby boomers, but by 2030, 70 million people will be over age 65.
And Ben, you've been talking a lot about this in a lot of the talks and all that you give, the lectures that you give regarding the aging America and all that, how we have 10,000 people a day turning 65. But, this is a lady named Carol Abea. She's nationally recognized as an expert on what we call the sandwich generation. Did you know there's an expert on the sandwich generation? Well, I didn't until I read this. But she breaks the sandwich generation down into a few different categories. First of all, the traditional one is those sandwiched between aging parents who need care and or help with their own children. So people that have aging parents and then they have kids that they're taking care of. But then they call it the club sandwich. Listen to this. The club sandwich is those, you did not know that the sandwich generation broke down into different types of sandwiches.
I want a turkey.
Okay, so listen to this. The club sandwich is for those that are in their 50s and 60s, sandwiched between aging parents, adult children, and grandchildren, or those in their 30s and 40s with young children, aging parents, and grandparents.
So these people are taking care of 3 generations. They should call them the turkey club sandwich.
They should.
Yeah.
They should. They should. For a discount, too. And then there's...
That's unbelievable, though. Like, I mean, people are taking care of their parents, themselves, their children, and their grandchildren. Right? Is that what I'm understanding? Is that a club?
Yeah. Oh,
Or
that's the turkey club.
Sandwich there? Oh, that's the turkey club. Okay. All right.
Okay, then there's one more. One more for all of you. The open-faced sandwich. Anyone else involved in elder care. So... whatever. I think they just threw that one in for laughs and all.
The open
But if you think about the term sandwich generation, it was actually introduced to the social work and gerontology communities back in '81. So it originally referred to younger women in their 30s and 40s who were taking care of their own children, but also having to meet the needs of their parents, employers, friends, and others. So now that people are living longer and children are growing up and needing continued care, the sandwiching is felt by both men and women who are in their 50s and their 60s.
The fact is that we're seeing a lot of people that are aware that they're really unprepared for this retirement piece, and they're concerned about how they're going to fund retirement.
Well, Seth, let me interrupt you because that's a great point. Yeah. And one of the things I think is really scary, okay, is that I was talking to somebody the other day, and they're all set for retiring on their own. Like if him and his wife want to retire and they want to help out their kids,
sure,
they could retire. But because people are living longer and they're realizing that their parents can't afford to stay retired, they're realizing they're going to have to work longer to meet both their parents' needs and their goals. Now think about that. Like, This is impacting, they're saying, hey, listen, we want to have a house here and a house here, and we're good with the income we have, but we realize the amount of money we're dishing out that would normally be going to our retirement plan, our kids are taken care of, is completely impacting our ability to meet the asset development that we need to have in our portfolios to actually obtain retirement and stay retired.
So here's an interesting scenario, real life, client-driven scenario here. Just about 2 years away from retirement, doing well, we've developed the plan, the portfolio, everything is tracking, the way it should, and we've, adjusted for kind of the worst case scenario. But the scenario is that, one of their children has recently gone through a divorce and is not able to support themselves and their 2 grandchildren. And so, becoming a multi-generational home is one thing, but that's not what they want to do in their retirement. And her not being able to support herself is a real concern. And their retirement not being able to cover that is another concern. So trying to build her into basically develop a business, a side business, has become the plan for them to be able to move her into a place where she can support herself in spite of whatever else might be going on. Now she needs to be able to sign up for that, and she needs to be able to move forward with that plan. But that's what they've done to try to help educate her to basically be self-supporting. And I think that's phenomenal, and that they're able even to do that. But that's a real world, practical situation that we're talking about right now.
So what we're really seeing is a dilemma here. We're seeing more and more people these days that are retirement age that are needing help to support even their own aging parents. And what we're seeing, really, and what Ben had alluded to earlier, is the fact that as a result of medical breakthroughs and medications, that really people's lives are being prolonged quite a bit. And unfortunately, they don't really have enough set aside to cover those extra years.
Well, think about it. If you save if you're lucky enough to start saving at 25 in today's world, and you save till 65, that's 40 years. You have a 1 in 4 chance, if you're still married, to live into 100. So you have to save enough over 40 years to pay for the next 35.
That is a crazy stat. In fact, I was just came across this article, and the article actually talks about current trajectories. It says that half of all babies born since the year 2000, you may have a couple of them, may live into the triple digits. It also said if you were born in 2007, that you have a 50% chance that you will live until age 104. Wow, that is just not exciting. So in some ways, it's a blessing.
Not when you look at my kids.
That's what I'm talking about. That's what I'm thinking about. So in some ways,
I love you guys.
It's a blessing and it's a challenge, because with the blessing of living a lot longer comes the challenge of taking care of yourself.
Well, that's one of the things I was curious to find out, is like, how much is technology going to be able to further the lives when we have, I think, a bit of an epidemic here in the United States of obesity, diabetes. I mean, maybe there's a cure. I mean, maybe, nanotechnology takes care of everything. You're listening to Money on Tap, and you can reach us at info@yourmoneyontap, or just go ahead and find us at yourmoneyontap.com. We appreciate all our listeners through iTunes and Stitcher, however you're listening to us today. Glad you found us. Stick around. We'll be right back.
Hello, my name is John Ryder, a partner with Brayshaw Financial Group and one of the co-hosts of Money on Tap. 10,000 Americans are turning 65 every day, and planning a successful retirement today is more challenging than ever, with a roller coaster stock market, political and economic uncertainty, and so many unknowns when it comes to the escalating costs of healthcare. Let us show you how we utilize the 3D method of investing, utilizing insurance, brokerage, and fee-based planning. Using our experience, let us help you plan for a successful retirement. Now is the right time to start getting help. Give us a call at Brayshaw Financial Group at 855-226-8551. Headquartered in Bedford, New Hampshire, we have offices across the country. We would love the opportunity to meet with you. There's absolutely no cost or obligation to meet with us, and we welcome you to our offices. Call 855-226-8551 today.
Welcome back. You're listening to Money on Tap. And if you've reached us through Stitcher or iTunes, welcome, or however you listen to your podcasts out there, welcome. One of the things we love to do with our listeners is if you email us at info@yourmoneyontap with any ideas that you'd like us to cover, any show suggestions, and we wind up using those, you will get a t-shirt or a hat as an appreciation for our listeners out there. And I can tell you that we have several people sporting and donning new apparel as we speak. It does look pretty snazzy, I must say. But that's a little off topic. We're going to get back to what we're talking about today, and that is what we're talking about and not talking about in the generations and the generation gap. We're not talking about finances. We're not sharing and communicating what we have done poorly as a generation. Now going to our baby boomer generation and into that Gen X generation, there's this communication gap, and people are not talking about, hey, this is what I would do differently in specific ways. This is how I've been successful, and this is what I would recommend. And we're having what we're finding is the data is supporting that there's repeats of missteps in building wealth or transferring into retirement. And we're going to talk and get into basically 5 key points that we really want to cover here as soon as I get off the microphone here and let John take over, which I think is right about now.
So listen to this. More than half of Gen Xers and 40% of baby boomers polled have never, ever given advice to their children about planning for retirement. Never. And of the parents who gave children retirement advice, most of it was vague, and there was kind of some vague guidance about savings and platitudes about doing this and staying out of debt and all that kind of thing. But it really kind of lacked any specific recommendations, which I can understand, especially in the culture that we're in. So in this survey, they asked participants whether they had ever given their children advice about planning for retirement. Gen Xers said 53% of Gen Xers said no. 47% said yes. Of baby boomers asked the same question, 60% said they had given advice and 40% said no. So, Seth, I got a question for you. Your dad is clearly, he is more, I think,
very young, very
around
young.
the same age as my dad. Did your dad give you some different advice along the way when it came to retirement planning and that kind of thing?
Should we start with the advice he listened to, or should we start with the advice?
Yeah, it was. Yeah, right. Exactly. It was seemed like every time I turn around, my dad's trying to hand off some advice. And I'm like, yeah. I don't want to hear it, Dad. I don't want to hear it. But yeah, my dad was really good with talking with me about putting together a plan, saving, how much you want to save, and they really, both of my parents worked with me from a very young age, and it was our household was one of those that if you want something, earn it, save. And 10% of every dollar that I made went right into, that's God's money.
Yeah.
And that was one of those lessons that I was like, man, why? And it took me a long time to understand how important was that. And then there was another half of that went into savings, and everything after that for me was, go buy whatever my new thing was. And I had I've always had expensive taste in hobbies. That's one of my, a stick and a rock was never enough.
Fine automobiles and yes.
Well, that's funny. I definitely give my kids, financial advice. And my daughter, who's 16, got her driver's license and so forth. We made her save up for insurance.
She just got her driver's license, didn't
she? She just got it.
Yeah.
She had to save up for driver's ed, and she had to save up for the insurance before she could take driver's ed.
It's not cheap either. That's expensive.
She was very ambitious. She had a few jobs last summer to do that, and she's working this summer to continue that privilege. And I think that's one of the things that I explained to her, that when we sat down, that the first 10% does go to the Lord, and then the second 10% goes to you, meaning that you save for yourself, and that in reality, the rest of your bills should cost no more than 75 to 80% of your income, and that's really where we should live. I mean, ultimately, if you can give to the Lord 10%, you should be able to give to your future, your health, your prosperity, your potential needs, your fears, all those overwhelming things at about 10%. And I think that's where, I talk to people. Some people say, well, you want me to save 10% on top of it? Some people are putting away in their retirement, and that would, in my opinion, count towards that. And those are the types of things. But I also talk to people all the time that, they don't have emergency funds, and your 401k is not an emergency fund. And so that
Absolutely.
if you, that's the scary part. People look at it that way. Well, I'll put it in there, and if I really need it, I'll get it out. What I tell people is, put it up to the match. Don't miss out on your match in your 401k. And then maybe start an emergency fund. And when you get that to a reasonable number that's relative to some fear or concern, if I was out of a job or lost a job for 3 to 6 months or 9 months, I would have that money on hand, free and clear. I wouldn't have to do anything with. That's where you should do that, and then maybe go back to the 401k if that's appropriate for you.
Okay, so here's what it sounds like to me. It sounds like I'm talking to two guys that grew up in abnormal households. One is, Seth, your dad gave you a lot of good proactive advice. That did not happen according to the survey. And then, Ben, it sounds like you're kind of passing that, the wisdom that you've gotten on to your kids, which is great. As a financial advisor, that's kind of cool, too.
So my mom was the financial head of our household. Yeah. No joke. My mom used to keep a book of every penny we borrowed from her, whether we went to a candy store or anything. Not only did she require that we pay it back, she charged us interest.
Okay.
And I'll never forget.
I like that. I've got a few people owing me right now that the bank of dad needs to collect.
Yeah, no, I'm dead serious. And I remember my brother Richard, when he closed out his book with my mom, he said, "I will never borrow from you again." And she goes, "That's the best thing you could have ever learned."
Wonderful. I would say my one of the things I took away from my growing up with my dad is him actually showing me the power of compound interest. And he laid it out for me and made me kind of work out that whole schedule and take a look at if I, put, I don't know, $100 or $1,000 a year away into a Roth, I think at that time was what he was trying to, talk to me about, or just any kind of an investment account that would compound. What would that look like when I'm 40 and 50? And, based off those numbers, if I would have paid attention, I would be retired right now. And you know what? You would be bringing me in just as a guest, to share that experience with you right now.
Yeah.
So what we're finding, and what I'm seeing across the board, and what we see most of the time when we're talking with people, is that the retirement advice they might have gotten was kind of a vague type of thing. But the key learning number 2 is that we're seeing that Gen Xers are often repeating baby boomers' retirement mistakes. So many consumers are not talking about retirement with their kids. And when they are, it's pretty clear that their advice is very, very vague. Yet part of helping the next generation succeed means allowing them to learn from previous generations' mistakes. Sometimes people don't do it because they feel a little bit guilty about it. Maybe they're a little bit embarrassed how it's gone in the past. But when we ask, what was the biggest financial mistake you made when you were young? 35% of respondents say, well, you know what? I spent money on things I didn't need. 28% said, I didn't save enough for my retirement. And 22% said they got in way too much debt. And 15% said something else, whatever that
Not
something
to
else
correct
was.
you, but this actual survey, well, I am correcting you, says 28% didn't save for retirement. Not that it says enough.
Oh.
It says didn't save anything, basically.
Wow.
Well, that's also under the category of enough. Not to correct you, but I am, Ben.
Thank you.
Let me correct you, Ben. No.
Yeah. Well, I feel bad, but that's even more serious when you really, if you had 28% of people that didn't save for retirement.
Yeah.
I mean, that's horrendous.
I love the I like the trailers here, the 15% that just say nah, or I don't know, something else.
Yeah, I don't know, something else. There's something else. Yeah.
None ya business.
Yeah.
So here's what we see when we're dealing with clients. We see some of the same regrets. And in our meeting with clients, we spend a lot of time working through scenarios and helping people to establish new habits, priorities when it comes to their retirement planning. But another thing that I wanted to mention is that many baby boomers, and we talked about fears not too long ago, but baby boomers and Gen Xers also share similar fears. As they approach retirement, most baby boomers are citing issues that they,
John,
I need to pay off debt. I need to get rid of expenses.
I want to bring in some kind of a sound right now, like I don't know.
A gong?
Yeah, something that says number 3.
Oh, key
Number
learning number
3.
3. Yeah. Well,
Number 3.
Well,
That's where we're
and
at.
that key learning number 3 is baby boomers and Gen Xers share similar financial fears. And I can see this. It says Gen Xers have strikingly similar concerns in addition to prioritizing college, saving for kids, retirement. As the generation closest to retirement, baby boomers have fears about having enough money or financial security for retirement. And in fact, 2/3 of baby boomers admit they're concerned about outliving their retirement savings. And Gen Xers are even more fearful. And the reason for that is they really haven't saved much. But 77% report that same concern.
Well, part of that sandwich generation is, how can you save when you're supporting your parents and your children and potentially your grandchildren all at the same time? That's a challenge. But we did just do a show last week on facing your financial fears, and I think that's part of it, is really just trying to address those things and get started and take some action. So, if you're thinking about your budget, which of these do you prioritize over putting money towards your retirement? What's holding you back? And 51% say paying off debt is holding them back from saving. And you know what? If you're a Dave Ramsey-ite out there, get it done, knock it out. And after that, what are we going to talk about?
Seth, I mean, and you're exactly right. I think we're talking a lot of numbers here. So some people are probably already lost. But essentially, when you compare baby boomers and Gen Xers, it's scary. And if anyone wants a copy of this report, email us at info@yourmoneyontap.com, and I'd be happy to email this to anybody out there. But when you look at how strikingly close these concerns between two major generation scenarios, which should have completely almost different concerns, right? Because they're different lifestyles, different entering different phases of life. The fact that these are so close is really concerning because it indicates a lot of what will impact the market. If people fear this, and there's a lot of people fearing this, or people are excited about something, and there's a lot of people with a lot of money behind it, it's going to impact the market. And that's what you need to look for when you're investing, is to look at
investing opportunities.
Yeah, opportunities and avoidances. You want to make sure you avoid some of this stuff. But when paying off debt is a major, major concern, to me that means people are going to have to work longer, or make more, or do both. Yeah. Right. If you got half the country of the half of these two, demographics, one's 51% and the other's 50%. They're
yes, right on the same page.
They're like identical. So when you look at that as a concern, that's an issue. That's something you really want to understand. How is that going to impact my portfolio, both good and bad?
So on top of that, when people in the survey were asked, what are the biggest impediments or things that are stopping you from putting away more money in retirement? And these are the answers, and these make sense. 34% will say, well, I don't make enough money. 28% say that, well, there's too many other expenses. There's debts, there's loans, there's money I owe to people. 13% are they're saving as much as my company allows through employee contributions. I can't do more. Or I don't need to save for retirement now. I don't know who's saying that.
Well, that's the smallest percentage.
Yeah, it's only 9%, but so not many.
More people said something else.
Yeah, 17% said something else, whatever that something else was.
Much greater, something else.
But that brings up a whole nother issue, right? Like people sometimes fail. They're so busy in life, they're not thinking about other pieces in the financial world and how it can impact. But I was talking to somebody the other day, and I was talking about the Roth IRA scenario, and we had done a Roth conversion for them, and they were like, boy, it was a lot of taxes, so glad I did it, and so forth. And I said, there's so much money getting converted in the Roth world that our government's not going to have the ability to touch as an income tax or a capital gains tax in the future once it's converted and you pay your taxes. But we need to collect more taxes in this country, unfortunately, to pay off the debt we've already incurred as a country. And, I'm really concerned about a national sales tax. I think there's some real viability that we're going to have so much money in the Roth world, because it used to be a small thing, $6,000 a year or $5,000 a year or $3,500. Remember those tiny,
now with conversions, it's really making
conversions. People are just they're figuring out ways to do it and figuring out good years to do it in, and our government's going to have there's billions, but it's probably going to be trillions if it's not there yet of Roth money that they can't touch, and I think that's going to lead to a national sales tax. What does that do to your IRA or your 401k though? Right? That means you have to pay income taxes on that money coming out, and then you're going to have to pay sales tax on things with that. People say, well, you're not going to get double taxed. We already do that today in states, right? We pull money out of our IRAs, we pay ordinary income tax, and then we pay state sales tax.
Yes, if you live in a
So
state
we already
that
do
has
that.
sure.
So New Hampshire and Oregon, we're fortunate enough we don't have sales tax. You don't have sales tax, right, Seth?
Nope, not yet.
Yeah, we have just room and board, basically, food and hotels.
Yeah.
So when you think about states already doing it, it's just a matter of time before the federal government picks that up. Now that either puts you on the front end or the back end. So either you're the IRA guy or you're the Roth guy. Which one do you want to be? And talking through those concerns and how that impacts your taxes today, and if taxes are rising in the future and you think that's what's going to happen, should you be paying taxes today, or will your income be low enough that that won't impact that to pay the taxes tomorrow? And those are the things that you have to work through. And I think the average Gen X, the average baby boomer, doesn't really have the time between taking care of their mom, taking care of their child, or their grandchildren, saving for retirement, trying to fit enough days in for work, racing on the weekends to the grandkids' game and this, that, and the other thing, and watching the kids that night, to actually spend time thinking about the many dimensions of finances and how that works. And that's what you need when it comes to figuring these things out.
And quite truthfully, that is the reason why people hire us many times, to help give them the advice that they need, they just don't have time to do, or they don't have the desire to do, or the expertise to do. And so those are the kind of things that we look at. So key learning number 4 would be Gen Xers are poised to be more involved in their parents' planning. So a third of Gen Xers say they're involved in their parents' retirement planning. That's actually an increase from the previous generation. Because it says this, as 3/4 of baby boomers did not participate at all in their parents' retirement planning. So it's interesting that Gen Xers are becoming more involved. Maybe they want more of a piece of that pie in the future. I don't know what that actually says, but
yeah, no, that's pretty common in our world now.
Yeah,
which
yeah.
we actually encourage, to be honest with you,
yes.
because it's
let's talk about this and not just talk about
people
it.
don't people get sick and need help more so now than just passing away. I mean, it's they become incapacitated and they need someone to help them with their finances, to stand out as their own for their own needs and concerns, and have that power of attorney and healthcare directive.
And as we talked about in key learning number 5, all that basically relates to is this, that Gen Xers are getting squeezed, supporting their parents and their kids, and sometimes their grandkids. So we find that really an overwhelming amount of people out there are finding themselves, partially supporting other generations of their family. Listen to this. Nearly a fifth of Gen Xers are supporting their parents, while most Gen Xers, 71%, are also supporting their children. So it's having a huge impact.
So half of Gen Xers are supporting somebody.
Yeah.
I can't even tell you how many times Kira, my wife, is in real estate, and how many times she's working with multi-generational living situations. And that is just, one of the, talk about a supply and demand opportunity. If anybody's out there looking for, what the future is going to hold, there's a lot of different cultures in different countries that's just the way life is, that's the way life runs out. That's the way that people live in all sorts. Basically, take a look across the world. We're kind of unique in the United States when we went through the kind of post-war World War II era, with incomes being what they were, and the opportunities and the prices of homes and the dollar equaling what it was. People were very capable of just supporting themselves for much longer than they are today.
So I think it boils down to this. We're talking with people these days, and here's sometimes what we need to talk with them about. Sometimes we need to lower expectations, downsize significantly, or risk exhausting the financial resources that we have. So the next 20 years is really going to be an interesting time. And we're going to have some creative solutions for actually funding these types of retirements.
And that's why when we talk to people, we say it's more important that you don't lose what you've made than it is how much you're making. So if the market's doing the 14% you were talking about earlier, Seth, since Trump was elected, if you're not doing 14, but you're in the ballpark, that's important. But not losing the 37% of the 2008 S&P comparison is more important, because any of those things going backwards on any of these statistics makes them all that much more relevant. And that's the scary part. And that's what everyone's operating in fear on. And that's where you need to do the control.
So we're going to go ahead and wrap things up. Did you guys have any last thoughts here before we head out? I know I did.
Well, here's my thought. My thought is this. When it comes to money, when it comes to planning and all, if you have advice that you can pass on to your kids, go ahead and do that. Take the time to do that because it could make huge differences later on. And also, if you are getting advice from your parents where they're talking about saving more and about avoiding debt, listen to that as well too. So be an open ear, but also be able to pass on advice when you can.
Ben?
Well, that's just where I'm at. I just, I think I just gave it, but I think ultimately, it's about protecting what you got. And that's more important in today's world than, chasing the dollar, because that's what everyone is, chasing returns. It just seems like, oh, should I, I call it the racetrack theory, Joe will always tell you when he made 25% in some mutual fund and, but he'll never tell you when he lost, 50% in another one, and everyone's talking about where they're making their money. But, the question is how much is the total portfolio moving? And are you in the ballpark, and are you protecting against loss? And those are the types of things that need to be addressed in today's market.
Yeah. For me, one of the things I think that could be a major factor here that I didn't talk about was the guilt and the shame piece, where, parents may not be able to or feel like they're able to have a conversation with their kids about their financial circumstances and what they're looking at in the next 15 years. And if that's you, do not allow guilt or shame or, lack of your saving in the past influence your ability to have a conversation with your kids, with your family. Be open, be connected, be honest, be humble, and be willing to find out different ways to relate and to look at finances and move through that process with some people that you trust and and you like and care about you. Hey, that's it for us at Money on Tap. We appreciate you joining us this week. We will look forward to next week having some more information for you, but you, until then, can reach us at info@yourmoneyontap.com. Thanks again, guys. It was a great time.
Thanks, Seth.
The views expressed are not necessarily the opinion of this radio station and should not be construed directly or indirectly as an offer to buy or sell any securities mentioned herein. Investing is subject to risks, including loss of principal invested. No strategy, product, material, or tool mentioned can assure a profit nor protect against loss. Please note that individual situations can vary. Therefore, the information, products, materials, or tools mentioned should be relied upon when coordinated with individual professional advice. Past performance is not a guarantee of future results. This show may be subsidized in whole or in part by a product sponsor or issuer. Securities and advisory services offered through SagePoint Financial Incorporated, member FINRA SIPC, and a registered investment advisor. All other services offered through Brayshaw Financial Group LLC are independent of SagePoint Financial. SagePoint Financial and Brayshaw Financial Group do not provide tax or legal advice. Main office is located at 116 South River Road, Bedford, New Hampshire, 03110, and can be reached at toll-free 855-226-8551.